Hello gorgeous peeps, I'm Chris from TechSpert, and today we're going to be taking a good long hard squint at the Motorola Moto G200 5G. Now the Moto G200 is, for lack of a better word, slightly mental. It certainly doesn't fit in well with the rest of the G series smartphones, which tend to come in at around £200 to £300 and suit fairly demanding users on a tight budget. Whereas the G200 will cost you 400 quid and it sports quite premium specs more in line with Motorola's Edge range. For instance, the grunt is provided by Qualcomm's Snapdragon 888 Plus chipset, which personally I've only seen stuffed inside of top-end gaming smartphones from earlier this year. That's enough waffle anyway, let's whip the Moto G200 5G on out of its box, taking a full-on tour of the hardware and the software, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Whee! So first up, what do you actually get stuffed inside of that box besides the Moto G200? Well, there is one 33 watt charging adapter, a little bit of Type-C USB cable action, got the usual quick start pamphlets and warranty guff, and yes, Motorola has kindly stuffed in a condom case as well to keep your fresh, spangly new Moto G200 5G safe from harm. This actually comes pre-wrapped as well, just for extra safety. And God, it's on there nice and tight, that's for sure. And that's everything you'll find inside of the box. So now let's check out the G200. So the Moto G200 5G is a bit of a beast at 6.8 inches, but it does also sport a 21:9 cinematic display. So that means that the phone is reasonably narrow, making it quite comfortable to clutch despite the size. And the comfort level is definitely helped by that contoured rear end as well, so you've got some really pleasing hand feel. Of course, one-handed use is still going to be a bit of a bugger, definitely good luck stretching all the way up to the top end of that display without using two mitts. And the back end of the Motorola Moto G200 is constructed from plastic still, despite the fact it is a £400 blow, and quite a lot of rivals do rock a glass back these days. You can grab this phone in a couple of different colours, Glacier Green, otherwise this here Stellar Blue model. That's Stellar as in, ooh, proper fancy, not Stellar as in the beer. And the Moto G200 is IP52 water repellent as well, so it can take a bit of a splash and get quite moist, but definitely don't go fully submerging it. If you want full-on water resistance at this sort of price point, you'll have to look to the likes of Samsung's Galaxy A52 5G. And it is a matte finish around the back end of the Moto G200. Does still seem to be picking up greasy prints fairly easily, unfortunately. Definitely keep a cleaning cloth handy if you want to keep it looking pristine. And I quite like the design of that camera array as well, which as you can see there just slopes gently off the surface of the Moto G200, although the three individual lenses do also poke free. And if we have a squint at that SIM tray as well, you'll see that it's a double-sided effort, so you can fit in two SIMs at once, but bugger all space for a micro SD memory card to expand the 128 gigs of storage. So here we go, welcome to the Moto G200 5G, all set up and good to go. And it is basically a stock Android experience as with all Motorola blows. But a little bit of bad news at first, because sadly you don't get the latest, freshest Android 12 OS out of the box. What you've got on here is the older, slightly staler Android 11. And Motorola apparently doesn't have a specific timeline for when the Moto G200 is going to get that Android 12 update. It just guarantees that it will happen at some point. Here's hoping we're not waiting too far into 2022 before it actually happens. And also Motorola can't guarantee that the Moto G200 is going to get Android 13 once that comes out. That's just something that it says it will look at in the future. But I do like the nice clean stock Android vibe that you've got here on the Moto G200. It's as pleasurable as always. Very little tinkering from Motorola itself. One of the only additions is the Moto Experiences app, which is definitely a worthy addition. This basically gives you fast access to all the bonus bits, including the ability to personalize your phone with specific wallpapers. Otherwise you can dive into styles and set up the icons, the fonts exactly how you like them. The gestures section is one of my personal favorites, despite the fact that Motorola has removed the one-handed mode, but you've still got lots of great stuff stuffed in there. My personal favorite, as always, is the double Bruce Lee karate chop in order to activate that torch. Wah! You've also got the double wrist twist to activate the camera, something that I'm personally struggling with these days with my knackered old joints. And the Moto G200 and the Moto Experiences app also serves up plenty of great features for media lovers and gamers. So for instance, you've got full Dolby Atmos support on here. I can automatically tweak the audio to suit whatever you're up to. Otherwise, you can manually configure it too. And if you do like a bit of the Genshins, bit of the Call of Duties, well, you do have the game time feature as well. I'll definitely be smashing through a good bit of that later. And like a lot of stock Android smartphones, which you get from the likes of Motorola and Nokia, you do unfortunately have a dedicated Google Assistant key, which I'm personally not really a fan of, I've got to say. If anything, I find I just usually accidentally activate that loads when I'm trying to stuff my phone into my pocket or something like that. And there's lots of other ways that you can get the Google Assistant to pop up, such as, for instance, swiping from the bottom corner. Because I wouldn't mind so much if you could actually remap that button to your preferred app or feature, but sadly, once again here on the Moto G200, that doesn't seem to be an option. To actually unlock the Motorola Moto G200, it is an edge-mounted fingerprint sensor built into this dinky little side power button, and so far seems pretty responsive, pretty accurate. It's not giving me any jip at least. And if you want to, you've also got the option of getting a bit of face unlock on the go, although not quite as useful every time you step out your front door. Now we have to wear a face mask. And as usual, it doesn't think my face is actually a face. I'm going to assume it's a problem with the studio lighting rather than my mug though, and let's just try a bit of the lift to wake, and yeah, that seems to work a charm. And like the Moto G100 before it, the Moto G200 has full support for Motorola's Ready For feature, which basically allows you to connect your phone to a big screen like your TV or a PC, and then use your phone's applications, access all your files, etc. on that bigger display. I did a full-on hands-on tour of that with my Moto G100 unboxing, so go check that out for all you need to know. Now, while the Motorola Moto G200 5G sports pretty premium specs in a lot of areas, one bit of it that isn't quite as premium as many of its rivals is that display. That's not to say it's a bad display by any means. It is an IPS screen though, rather than OLED text. You don't get quite as crisp contrast, not those true-to-life blacks that you will get on an OLED panel. Okay-ish viewing angles, not quite as strong there either, but the brightness levels, no problems. You'll have no issues seeing what is going on, even with lots of sunlight. Remember that, fellow Brits? This 6.8-inch rocks a Full HD Plus resolution, so reasonably crisp visuals despite the fact that it is quite a spacious display. You've also got support for HDR10 content as well, so on the likes of Netflix you can get some HDR streaming on the go. Of course, that 21:9 stretched aspect ratio, very well suited to cinematic fare, so movies shot in 21:9, you'll get no letterboxing or pillar boxing or anything, but you will get some serious pillar boxing on more standard content, especially old TV shows that are shot in 3:4. And if you dive into the display settings on the Moto G200, you've got quite a few bits that you can play around with, including that color output, which as you can see there, saturated by default. And even though those tones aren't quite as rich as what you would get from an OLED panel, certainly a good OLED panel, the Moto G200 still does a pretty damn good job of your Pixar fare and other animated shenanigans. Unlike most rivals at this price point, even those with OLED displays, you do have a dynamic refresh rate as well, although this goes all the way up to 144 Hz here on the Moto G200, whereas a lot of rivals do top off at 90, perhaps 120. It's good news for your supported content, especially any games that you have that support that 144 frames per second. Sadly, however, it is a mono speaker setup here on the Moto G200, like pretty much all Motorola blowers these days, whereas a lot of rivals do offer a stereo speaker setup, but let's bump up the volume, see if it's actually any good. Although the A52s 5G doesn't exactly charge particularly quickly, and even worse, you get a measly 15-watt charger. And yeah, it's absolutely fine. Reasonable top volume, so hopefully you should be able to hear what's going on even when you've got quite a noisy household, lots of background chatter. Sadly, not the greatest quality on that top volume, slightly tinny output. So yeah, you might want to plug in some headphones if you want to get some proper good audio on the go. I say plug in, there is bugger all headphone jack action here on the Moto G200, so you're going to have to use a dongle, otherwise it's Bluetooth 5.2 all the way. Of course, you do have that Dolby audio tuning and everything as well, got a bit of Snapdragon sound support, so hopefully when you do pair up with a Bluetooth speaker or Bluetooth headphones, you should get some nice output. But I am hoping to bring you a full in-depth Moto G200 review once I've had my chance to slap a SIM in there and give it a full-on real-world test use as my personal handset for around a week or so. So stay tuned for more on the Bluetooth chops, the camera tech, all of that good stuff. Now, one of the most impressive aspects of the Moto G200 5G is the performance, undoubtedly, because this thing is powered by the Snapdragon 888 Plus chipset, a Billy Big Bollocks version of the original 888, which was already packed into loads of premium smartphones last year. Backed by 8 gigs of RAM, this basically means the Moto G200 can blaze its way through any title on the Google Play Store. Any game is fair game. I did see a little bit of stumbling in Genshin Impact when I bumped it up to the higher detail settings at 60 frames per second. The back end of the Moto G200 did get a little bit toasty, so that was probably what was causing it. But I will be fully testing out the gaming chops of the Moto G200, as I say, for my in-depth review. But I did briefly mention earlier the Motorola Moto Game Time feature, which can be called into action with a quick poke or swipe while you are gaming. And this has improved over the last sort of year or so, so it's easier to use now. And as you can see, it adds all kinds of bonus features to help you get your most your gaming experience, including blocking pesky calls and notifications. You can stream direct to Twitch or just record your screen, all kinds of shenanigans, and there is a high performance mode on there as well. Although as Motorola itself admits right there, your device might get even hotter when using this. So again, this is something I'll be fully testing out for my in-depth review. And of course, one of the other benefits of the Snapdragon 888 Plus is you do get full 5G support here on the Moto G200. Again, pretty common feature at this sort of price point anyway. And I believe you've got Wi-Fi 6 support on there as well. As for the battery, where you got a 5,000 milliamp cell crammed inside of the Moto G200 5G, so that should keep you going all day long, even with plenty of use, though if you are going to be getting your Genshin on the go, that's probably going to sap it pretty quick. But again, stay tuned for that review. And when the G200 is wiped out, it supports 33 watt wired charging, reasonably nippy, not the fastest you'll find at this price point, but hopefully it won't take too long to get it powered back up again. You do actually get a 33 watt charger bundled in the box as well, which is great to see. And to finish off this Moto G200 unboxing and hands-on tour, let's check out that rear camera tech, which is headed up by a 108 megapixel primary camera sensor. It's the same Motorola camera app as usual here on the Moto G200, so quite feature packed but also reasonably well laid out. You've got those usual camera AI smarts on board, so for instance if the Moto G200 detects a face like the lovely Veronica's here, pop up with a little helpful suggestion. Maybe you want to swap to portrait, get that lovely bokeh action on the go. You can access various other features with a quick flick like so, for instance the flash and the timer. You can quickly switch between the photo and the video modes down below, otherwise you do have a buttload of extra bonus bits to choose from. So for instance, while the G200 doesn't shoot at that full 108 megapixels with the primary sensor, it uses 9-in-1 pixel binning to produce a nice well-balanced shot. You do have an ultra res mode if you do want to shoot at that maximum res. Hopefully should be handy for shooting a really detailed shot, so then you can crop in without losing much in the way of that finer detail. You've also got a pro mode for manual controls. You've got the portrait mode, which we already touched on, the night vision mode for when the lights are low. And I do like the way that Motorola splits the photo and the video bonus features into separate sections, which you don't get on many other smartphones. So I've been playing with the Moto G200 for close to 24 hours now, so here's a small selection of sample photos that I've shot so far, most of them around Winter Wonderland in London. So as you can see there, Moto G200 does a reasonable job of those night shots, especially when there's high contrast on the go. But of course I will be fully testing this out again for my review. You've also got a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter, which you can swap to at any point. And this lens is also used for the macro vision feature as well, if you want to get really up close and personal with your subject. And then the final lens on the arse end there of the Moto G200 is just your basic 2 megapixel depth sensor for your, your portrait shots. If we swap to video, well, the Moto G200 is fully capable of shooting at 4K at 30 or 60 frames per second. Otherwise, you can also bump it all the way up to 8K, although in this mode you can only shoot at 24 FPS. And so far seems to do a pretty decent job at that 4K level. Obviously, if you bump it up to 8K, you will absolutely destroy the Moto G200 storage. You'll blaze through that in no time at all. But again, stay tuned for my in-depth review for more thoughts on this. And then if we flip to the front end, you've got a 16 megapixel selfie shooter built into the Moto G200 there. And this should be absolutely fine for your everyday shareable shots. Stick them on the social medias, even in low light, seem to do pretty decent job. And that right there, my lovelies, is the Motorola Moto G200 5G in a nutshell. As I say, my full review will hopefully be dropping in about a week or so once I've actually had a chance to properly test it out as my full-time in-depth smartphone. But in the meantime, looks like a solid all-round mid-range handset. It's a shame it's not an OLED display, but gotta say that performance is pretty solid. Hopefully the battery life will hold up, as will the camera tech. But what do you guys reckon? Are you tempted by the Moto G200? It goes on sale this month, December, for £400. So yes, definitely let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If there's any burning questions you have, anything you want me to cover in the review, definitely slap them down below as well. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers!